So what if I told you that your IQ, it's not some fixed number you're stuck with for life? We're all taught from a young age that intelligence is something you're born with. You either have it or you don't. But what this source material suggests is that your IQ isn't a score. It's a system you can actually control and even rebuild.
Okay, so let's just jump right in with a big question. I mean, if intelligence is really set in stone, how do we explain some of history's greatest minds? Albert Einstein, he was considered slow as a kid. Thomas Edison was literally kicked out of school. They weren't just born with a genius label, they became geniuses.
This quote just perfectly nails the core idea. The science is crystal clear. Your brain acts like a muscle. If you don't challenge it, it weakens. But if you train it with the right methods, you can dramatically increase its output. So the real question isn't how smart you are, it's how are you using your brain.
So how do you train it? Well, the source material we're breaking down today, it lays out 5 specific, actionable habits, or systems really, designed to rebuild your brain from the ground up. Think of these habits as the new operating system for your intelligence.
All right, here's our roadmap. We're going to start with creating the mental space to think, then move to building cognitive muscle through struggle, using writing to clarify your thoughts, building systems instead of just memorizing facts, and finally, turning your memory into a high-speed engine for intelligence.
First up is a habit that runs completely counter to our modern world, learning to think without all the constant noise. I mean, we are surrounded by an endless stream of input, reels, videos, podcasts, but here's the kicker. This constant stimulation is actually preventing our brains from doing their absolute best work.
You know, neuroscience actually has a name for what happens when your brain is finally empty of all that external input. It's called the default mode network. And listen, this is not an idle state. Nope. It's when your brain really gets to work, consolidating memories, making new connections, and generating those incredible aha moments of deep insight and creativity. This is where the real growth happens.
So here's the protocol. It's incredibly simple, but trust me, it's not easy. Just sit for 10 minutes a day. No phone, no music, no podcasts, 0 distractions. And yeah, at first it's going to feel incredibly boring. But that boredom, that's the sound of your brain finally getting the quiet space it needs to actually think.
Now that first habit of creating quiet space builds directly into our second one. This one is called the productive struggle. Let's be honest, we've become addicted to getting answers in seconds. We hit a problem, we Google it, and we move on. The issue is, when you do that, your brain learns absolutely nothing.
But psychology shows us there's a much better way. Productive struggle is the process of wrestling with a problem. When you try and you fail, and then you try again, you are literally forcing your brain to forge new, stronger neural pathways. That feeling of frustration isn't a sign of failure. It's the feeling of your brain getting stronger.
So here's your action plan. The next time you get stuck on something, resist that urge to immediately look up the answer or ask for help. Give yourself a hard 5-minute deadline to just struggle with it on your own. That struggle is the workout your brain needs.
Our third habit fundamentally reframes how we should look at writing. Most of us are taught to write things down just so we can remember them. But what if writing wasn't for storage? What if it was for the actual process of thinking itself?
Think about it. In our heads, ideas are often messy, abstract, and incomplete. We might have a vague feeling or a half-formed concept, but it's not solid. It's really just a cloud of thought.
And this is where writing just works its magic. The act of putting words on a page forces you to confront that vagueness. It compels you to structure your ideas, find the logical connections, and turn that messy cloud into a clear, understandable system.
The key takeaway here is this. Don't just write down what you know. Write about what you don't understand. If you look at Leonardo da Vinci's notebooks, they were a total mess of ideas, questions, and sketches. He was writing to figure things out, not just to record facts. That's where the real learning happens.
All right, habit number 4 is about leveling up how you learn. It's about moving beyond simply collecting isolated bits of information and instead focusing on building these big, interconnected systems of knowledge, often called mental models. Now, what's really interesting here is how it frames the two approaches. You've got low-level thinking, which is about memorizing facts. You know, what is the capital of Australia? Then you have high-level thinking, which is about understanding the underlying systems. Why are most capitals of countries major economic or transit hubs? See the difference?
Let's look at some quick examples. In biology, you don't just memorize the names of species, you learn the system of adaptation. In economics, you don't just look at a price, you learn the system of incentives. In psychology, you don't just memorize one study, you learn the underlying system of cognitive bias. When you start connecting these big ideas across different fields, your intelligence doesn't just add, it multiplies.
And that brings us to our final habit, which directly challenges another common belief, that memory and intelligence are separate things. The source material argues they are deeply intertwined. A stronger, faster memory leads directly to faster, more agile thinking.
But the key, and this is a big one, is how you build that memory. Passively rereading your notes is one of the least effective ways to learn. The scientifically backed technique is active recall. This means closing the book and actively forcing your brain to retrieve the information. Try to explain a concept out loud, to yourself, without looking at the source material.
And this isn't just some mental trick, this is biology. When you consistently practice active recall, especially when you combine it with spaced repetition, reviewing information at increasing intervals, studies show you are physically changing the structure of your brain, making those neural pathways stronger and way more efficient.
So let's bring it all together. Your intelligence isn't some fixed score you were given. It is the direct result of the systems and habits you practice every single day. Thinking without noise, embracing the struggle, writing to understand, building mental models, and training your memory, these are the components of your own personal intelligence system.
And that leaves us with a final question. Every day, you have a choice. You can be a passive consumer of information, endlessly scrolling and forgetting. Or you can be an active thinker, deliberately applying these systems to build a sharper, more powerful mind. The choice is yours. Which will it be?